Good morning. We are the New York Giants Preservation Society. Our group has provided many Zoom session virtual videos that you see on our channel. Prior to this, though, we had many meetings that were live meetings in Lower Manhattan. And today, I want to share those with you, a compilation of all of the speakers that addressed our group during the years, starting in 2012 when we became the New York Giants Preservation Society. So I am going to start to share the screen here. And we will begin. And our meetings took place at the BERGINO Baseball Clubhouse, which was in Lower Manhattan. It was a beautiful baseball boutique run by the great Jay Goldberg. Jay welcomed us with open arms, and we began our friendship and relationship in 2012. Our first meeting took place in October of 2012 with the great Josh Prager. There you see Josh on the far left, and Jay Goldberg and Steve Rothschild. Josh is a phenomenal writer, and he spoke about his book, The Echoing Green, The Untold Story of Bobby Thompson, Ralph Branker, and the Shot Heard Around the World. And if you haven't read that book, you need to. It's a great story about the Giants possibly stealing signs during the 51 season. Highly recommended. In 2013, in April, we had Dr. Larry Hogan. Larry has just incredible knowledge of African American baseball, Negro leagues, just a really intelligent man. And he was there to discuss his book, So Many Seasons in the Sun, A Century and More of Conversation with Baseball's Greatest Clubhouse Managers. Mike Murphy of the Giants, Ed Logan of the San Francisco and New York Giants, Fred Logan, just a marvelous book of very underappreciated men in baseball. We then moved to July of 2013 with author Robert Murphy. There you see Robert with member Perry Barber. Robert contributed, wrote the book After Many a Summer, Passing of the Giants and Dodgers and the Golden Age in New York baseball. This was about the Giants and Dodgers stay in New York and then leaving. So mostly talking about the last few seasons, 57 when they left and 58 when the Giants arrived in San Francisco. Our next guest was in September of 2013, the late great Peter McGowan. Peter was such an advocate of our group. He's the head of the Giants, the CEO, but he never turned his back on the Giants. And if you go to Oracle Park today, you'll see all the things that he had done to remember and glorify the past of the New York Giants. Here's another picture of Peter. He is greatly missed by the Giants and especially us as well, because he was a vital member of our group. As we hit 2014, our first guest in January was Ken Davidoff, who at that time was the great writer for the New York Post. He had written for papers in New Jersey and Newsday, where I first began corresponding with him. He was there to talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame election. There you see Jay and Ken's son, Jonathan. And there we see the logo of the paper he was working for, the New York Post at the time. In April of 2014, we hosted the Rhodes family, Elaine Rhodes in the orange shirt and Jeff Rhodes in the green shirt. They are the daughter and son of legendary Giant World Series hero Dusty Rhodes. And they spoke about their dad, and it was a wonderful evening. And there we see a close-up of Helena. Helene, not Helena, Helene. As we moved into June of 2014, we had Hall of Fame writer Bill Madden. There we see Bill and Jay Goldberg. Bill was there to discuss his book, 1954. The year Willie Mays and the first generation of Black superstars changed Major League Baseball forever, 1954. And of course, the famed cover of The Catch. Bill is just a tremendous writer. In October of 2014, we had the great and late Ed Lucas. If you don't know Ed's story, he told us about it that night, but he lost his sight right after Bobby Thompson hit the shot heard around the world. He went out to play baseball to celebrate, got hit right between the eyes and never saw again. But that did not stop him from living and doing what he did the best, which turned out to be writing. He became a highly acclaimed sports writer, mostly in New Jersey. Got married at home plate with his wife, Allison, at Yankee Stadium. So he lived a great life. We miss him. Just so happens that night in 2014, the Giants began their 2014 World Series run. Many of us stayed after to watch Brandon Crawford hit a grand slam home run in the wild card game to launch the Giants' march to glory. Great book to read regarding Ed is Seeing Home, the Ed Lucas story, a blind broadcaster story of overcoming life's greatest obstacles. As we turn to 2015, we hosted Jamie Rupert. Jamie is Horace Stoneham's granddaughter. She's the good-looking one in the middle, unlike the rest of us there. Pictured are Larry Hands, big-time Giant fan. The late, great Alan Abrams, great Giant fan, sorely missed. And, of course, Jay looking dapper. Jamie spoke about her grandfather, Horace Stoneham, who's most people vilified for taking the Giants away. She pointed out, though, the many great things he did by bringing baseball to San Francisco. Buying and playing many Latino baseball players, African Americans, Asian players, starting spring training in Arizona, and the list goes on. And there's a nice picture of Jamie as well. In June of 2015, we had the great San Francisco Giant writer, Andy Baggerly. Andy is just phenomenal. He's worked for many papers out there. Currently, he's working for The Athletic and is no doubt one of their most acclaimed writers. If you don't read his stuff, you're missing a great deal. Andy was there to talk about his book, Giant Splash, Onzonian Blast, World Series Parades, and other thrilling moments by the Bay. Just a terrific writer, Andy Baggerly. In November, we had 2015 Arnold Haino. Arnold is an acclaimed writer, and he was talking about his DVD that he came out with John. And John, I'm sorry, I'm going to ruin your name. Leon Odakis, and I'm just going to call him John to make it easy. John is a great filmmaker, and he accompanied Arnold, and they talked about his DV, Haino, A Century in the Bleachers, and of course his book of a similar title that many of you read growing up as kids and might have even got you into baseball. As we turn to 2016, we had David Lipman and Nicholas Duante. They both contributed to the great book about the 1951 Giants called The Team That Time Won't Forget. David is pictured in the white outfit, Nick in the shirt on the right, and then you see Jay again, Jay Goldberg, on the far left behind in front of the baseballs. And then we see a nice picture of the team that time won't forget, the 1951 Giants. Highly, highly recommended. In April of 2016, we hosted Chris Half. Chris, beat writer for the Giants, and still does writing for a paper out in San Francisco about the Giants. Just a great guy, a great writer. He had written previously a book called This Is Our Time about the 2010 World Series Giants. That book had been out for a while. Chris spent some time talking about that, but mostly about the Giants of 2016. As we turn to October, Paul Kosak joined us. Paul is a big-time San Francisco fan who lives in Syracuse. And he wrote this book called Chasing Willie Mays, who was his lifetime hero. And he wanted to meet him desperately. And he actually did meet him at the trophy tours as well. And he included us in our book, which was really, really nice. And there you see a memoir, Chasing Willie Mays, Chronicles of a Fan Left Behind. Some of you might be wondering, why does Willie Mays have the glove in the wrong hand? And the reason is that is Paul, in his mind, catching the ball, making the catch, and Paul is left-handed. So it is not a editor's error. That's why Paul wanted it, and I think that's really great. We then turned the calendar to 2017, and in January we had the great Dan Taylor. If you haven't heard Dan speak, you are missing much. He does baseball broadcasts. He's got a golden voice. He's also a phenomenal writer. He's prolific and does many, many books on baseball. He was there to talk about his book on George Genovese, A Scout's Report, My 70 Years in Baseball. Fabulous book, and Dan is still very much writing today. There's a new book coming out regarding Babe Ruth later in the year in April. In May of 2017, we had a doubleheader spot, so to speak. Pictured as Hal Bach in the blue and Jerry Leibowitz in the jacket, along with Jay there. Hal wrote a book called Banned, a great book about players getting banned from baseball. And Jerry Leibowitz is a tremendous memorabilia collector and seller of New York Giant items. There we see Hal's book, Banned, Baseball's Blacklist of All-Stars and All-Surrounds by Hal Bach. And there's Jerry with a prized New York Giant piece of memorabilia. June came around and we had Rob Garrett. Rob is just a terrific writer. He, at the time, had a book out called Home Team. There you see Rob right in the middle. Home Team, The Turbulent History of the San Francisco Giants. Just a great book encompassing the entire history of the franchise up until the publication in 2017. Highly recommended for any of you San Francisco Giant fans. Next, in November of 2017, we had Steve Steinberg. Steve is pictured in the middle. Steve wrote a great book called 1921, The Yankees, the Giants, and the Battle for Baseball Supremacy in New York. Great book. Steve's also currently writing another book on Mike Donlin of the New York Giants. That turned out to be our last meeting at the BERGINO Baseball Clubhouse. Jay decided not to continue with the shop. And they see a picture of the crowd in one of the events. And here's another picture. This was our home base. And Jay, again, we cannot thank you for your hospitality all those years. We started with you in 2012, and the last meeting was in 2017. It was a great ride, and we owe you a huge debt of gratitude. We resumed our meetings in November of 2018 at FINNERTY'S, a bar pretty close to where Jay's Boutique was in Lower Manhattan. This was a San Francisco transplant delight, as this bar catered to the San Francisco crowd, showing 49er games, Shark games, and of course the Giant games. And we were really well treated by Peter Selig and Brian Stapleton, and we thank them for their hospitality for the short run that we had with them. Our first meeting took place in November of 2018 with Lincoln Mitchell. Lincoln lives in New York, spent a lot of time in San Francisco as well, and writes books, a lot of books about the Giants, which is great, the San Francisco Giants. And he was there to discuss the Dodgers, the Giants, and baseball goes west, the shaping of the major leagues. It's a real good book. Later on, I'm skipping ahead, but he also came back in January of 2020 to talk about his book, San Francisco Year Zero, Political Upheaval, Punk Rock, and a third place baseball team. In February of 2019, we had a celebration of what would have been Monty Irvin's 100th birthday, and two of our members who were very knowledgeable and friendly with Monty spoke on his behalf. Here we see Gary Brown, a really, really smart man who knows everything about the Giants, and Monty Irvin, and John Barr, also a huge Monty Irvin fan, as well as a Bobby Thompson fan. And there we see some of the memorabilia. We had a bobblehead, Monty Irvin, his World Series flag, our program for the evening, and another nice picture of Monty in a New York Giant hat there. In November of 2019, we had Mo Resner. Mo is just a great guy, does everything, comedian, scout, player, and evidently a filmmaker. He was there to discuss the end of an era, the last New York Giant games at Polo Grounds, September 29, 1957. Mo, as a young man, somehow got on the field and filmed all the pageantry of the day, the opening ceremonies, the last out, and then he decided to enhance it. He has the clubhouse, the final talks in the clubhouse and interviews. There's also a piece on Ed Logan in there. Ed Randall's in there. Perry Barbert's in there. This is a great piece of baseball history. It is still available to own. And there's a copy up at the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. And again, I spoke earlier in 2020, in January, we had Lincoln Mitchell, and I showed you his book about a political zero. But also in January 2020, we had Stu Thornley. Stu is an authoritarian on the Polo Grounds, and he's just a great writer out of Minnesota. And he spoke about the Polo Grounds, Essays and Memories of New York City's Historic Ballpark, 1880 to 1963. That turned out to be our last meeting at FINNERTY'S because that dreadful COVID came, ending any meetings. Yes, a couple of pictures of crowds. And again, after the meeting, we went virtual later in August. FINNERTY'S that year decided to close down due to COVID, and they have not reopened. We wish Brian and Dieter the best of luck in all their future endeavors, and we thank them also for their hospitality. So that was the end of our live meetings for the time. Hopefully they'll return in some form, some year when everything clears out. I'd like to have maybe one or two a year, but we'll see what happens. Right now we are going virtual, and going with a head of steam. I thank you for listening to the story. Hopefully, um, some of you did not know about these events, and now you do. Our group is continuing to go forward, and I hope that you all become a part of it. Have a great day and be well.